I should put my microphone down. Good evening. This is the October 2nd City of Sunbury Services Committee meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Capel?
Here.
Mayor St. John?
Here.
Mr. Ayer? Here. Mr. Grumney?
Here.
Board President?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from our September 4th meeting. Can I get a second? Second. Second by Mr. Grumney. Roll call.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Grumney?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Mr. Ayer? Yes. 4 yeas?
Right. I believe that our visitors are actually part of our agenda this evening. So if we can jump right into the 2025 street program, it's my favorite services meeting of the whole year, at least when we're not talking about trees.
All right, so as Carla goes to the podium and we pull her presentation up, we do have Jake Stockmaster and of course, you know, Dan Whited here as well. I think both to kind of assist a little bit, but mostly Carla will give the presentation. So again, we're looking at the 2025 street program, preliminary proposal, and see if we can't develop some consensus this evening. If not, you know, we'll then figure out a strategy for moving forward. So.
Great.
Yep.
All right, with that, I'll get started. Daryl has challenged me to do the presentation in 20 minutes, so I've started my timer. We'll see how it goes. Here's a quick agenda of what we'll be going over. The yellow highlighted portion at the top is something I want you to keep in mind. At the end of this, we are hoping for guidance or feedback related to the streets that we would like to propose for next year's improvements, because the application for OPWC is November 1st. So if for some reason we need to get together again or have some sort of offline meeting because there needs to be more discussion, just let us know. The handout you have in front of you is two-sided. So this is on one side. These are the overall ratings for the city streets. CT Consultants did the PACER ratings. I have a feeling you guys have had a presentation on PACER before. If you haven't, essentially it's pavement conditions ratings. Their scale is 1 through 10, with 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. Just so you know, the city doesn't have any streets that are 1s. We do have a couple of 2s. And we'll be going through this in greater detail. The next slide shows the initial feedback that we got from CT based on their ratings. So the cyan blue, so the little light blue color there, the red and the green all came back as streets that were identified as potential for next year. Don't get too hung up on this slide. I know it's difficult to read and you have the handout in front of you, which is also very difficult. I have zoomed in sections of this as we go through it. So hopefully you'll be able to get a better picture. But I did want to point out that we have a lot of streets that are shown as red, and that's going to be presented as generally a mill and fill. We also have the cyan blue, which is going to be more of like a reconstruction, essentially going a little bit deeper than a mill and fill and doing some edge treatment stabilization or other methods to further stabilize those streets. So here it is in a list, so you can kind of get a good idea of where the streets are. Along the edge, you can see the PACER ratings. We are looking at streets that are 2s, 3s, 4s, and a few 5s for these improvements. We also have a list of the costs associated with each of the streets. I will have a duplicate slide of this after we go through it, also indicating which roads I recommend delaying so that we can meet our budget requirements. Right now, up in the corner, you can see our budget that we're going to try to meet would be 1.3 million, and that's going to have $300,000 in OPWC grant funding, and then $100,000 for that OPWC loan will be in the application. And then that is all inclusive of design, construction inspection, and the construction of the streets. I'm big into color coordinating things, and Alyssa and I have that in common. But I have grouped the streets into a few different sections. I'm going to start with the purple and then go to the blue. The east side and the west side are a little bit simpler explanations, and then we're going to go through the middle, that yellow and the black circle as well. So let's talk about the purple. For these streets, these are all on the west side. The green ones that are identified are streets that we are recommending delaying until next year. We do have pictures of all of these streets, so you can take a look at them, but we felt that these streets could wait a little further out. One of the reasons why Fairland, can you guys see it?
Mhm.
One of the reasons Fairland, we've left that, even though it's kind of connected to those green lines, is we are looking to do an RRFB there. That's one of those rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So a push button crosswalk near GRE Elementary School. So we recommend keeping that one in there. Also down at the bottom, we have Millstream Street and Mill Run Drive. Those are two streets that also have PACER ratings of 5 that I feel could be delayed until later. So I have those noted there as well. At the top, another PACER rating of 5 for Cheshire Road. We want to keep that one in. There are drainage concerns there as well as a culvert that needs repaired. At least that's the feedback that I've been given by CT. So we've delayed that once already and would like to keep it in. Next to the blue, I guess maybe the other cyan blue circle. So on the east side, a lot of these ratings, if you can read the numbers, they're lower. We've got 2s, 3s, and 4s. I am recommending that we do improve all of the streets on this side. They are grouped together for mobilization, and just based on the pictures, and Jake and I went out and walked a good number of these streets, or at least drove them to look at their conditions. So we'd like to keep those on. In this area, the very first street that we went up to at the very top is Walnut View. Of course, that is a road that probably isn't heavily traveled, but it is absolutely unraveling at the edges. So trying to stabilize the edge of that road, putting a little bit more money into it at this point is going to be necessary, because if we were just to do a mill and fill in a year or two, you're going to start to see that damage again. Also wanted to point out that we have a green line here as well as a street that's been identified for maintenance and doing some sort of treatment. However, the East Granville Street in that section, we're going to be doing a widening project in 2027. We have federal funding and state funding for this in the amount of over $5 million. So we are going to start that design process with that street now, as soon as possible, and then we'll be getting into the construction when the funds are available in 2027.
So to be clear, the recommendation there is not to keep that one on the 2025 list.
Yeah. To the black area. So this is Harrison Street. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that location. It is just south of the police station off of Columbus Street. And there's a small section you can see in red that is identified to pave. I am recommending that we go ahead now and do that restoration. The road conditions on each side of it are significantly better, and it's just one block that is in poor condition. So the idea of maybe doing something more comprehensive here is something I'd like to at least dip my toe in. I don't need an answer for that for the OPWC funding for now, because we don't have enough time in order to prepare this type of work. But when you go to Harrison Street, there are these long areas where the driveway access is open, and trying to tighten up what we call access management. And I'll have pictures of this later in the presentation to try and make it a little bit safer, and also to try and maybe delineate the road from some of the parking areas on Harrison is something that I'd like to look at doing. So sometimes these more comprehensive projects, making sure there are sidewalks, maybe putting another RRFB, push button flash crossing device in this location could be beneficial. And anytime there's a school there and it's a slightly commercial area, we may be able to get some funding. All right, so the yellow area, I've divided it into two sections, north and south. So for Columbus Street, we're going to start at the top and go through the different areas. But, you know, real quick, just backing up, you can see that the red line along the yellow corridor along Columbus and down into South 3C, old 3C road is intermittent. So they're recommending that only certain sections would really require or are to the point where they could benefit from a mill and fill. I'm interested in proposing that we delay and do some in-house maintenance and reevaluate whether larger projects could be done along this area. So I'd like to walk you guys through that. Starting with the yellow north, after this slide, there will be a lot of pictures because, as you know, the Google Street View car came through in August. So we have some really current data and I took some snapshots and we can talk about it as we go through. But as we do, I've got 4 bullet points that are indented there that I really want you guys to think about as we look at the pictures. Again, access management, some of these driveways, trying to make sure they line up, best practices, narrow them down a little bit more so that people can't pull in to such wide areas. I think if you're not familiar with it, I think you'll see it when we pull the pictures up. Curbed and uncurbed, there are a lot of road sections along here that have small curb after years and years of putting pavement over pavement. That curb is now just sitting at the top along this section of road. And then, of course, streetscapes. I realize there's a whole nother committee for this, but the idea of doing a more comprehensive project for this area is something that, you know, I think has a lot of crossover for services and streetscapes and something we want to keep in mind as we start planning some of these projects. And then, of course, this corridor is more of a collector for the city. So it's a busier street and it has a lot of gateways entering into Sunbury, entering into the historic square area of Sunbury. So that's one of the things I want you guys to keep in mind as we go through the pictures. But right now, my recommendation is to defer this maintenance, do in-house maintenance. You can see the police station right here. And we are recommending that we keep the police station parking lot and at least bid it out and see where the pricing comes out. But then maybe looking at this whole corridor down to Cherry Street a little bit more comprehensively in the next few years.
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Sure.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but on the exhibit, it's saying mill and fill 2025.
Yep. So the red portion on the original drawing, that portion is what would be recommended only for mill and fill. Do you see the purplish outline?
A little bit.
It's hard to see. So it circles all the way from
Okay.
3 down to Cherry Street, and then it kind of L's out to the west where the bend comes from. Well, this would be 3 over here. So this whole area would be evaluated for a larger project. And as we walk through, I'll kind of talk about some of the features that we could consider doing something more. Today, we could just pave the red area. That is the area when you just look at the pavement itself. We recommend that area to be paved now. But in-house, we could do deferred maintenance. JC could do patching, crack fill, and see if we can extend the pavement life so that we can do something more comprehensive.
Just to ask one more time, I followed you until the last sentence. The red section, is that being proposed to be milled and filled next year?
It was proposed by CT, and I'm recommending that we wait to do the mill and
So
fill.
there's gonna be a summary of like,
Yep, so eventually I'll have that cost sheet and you'll see X's next to some of these areas that were proposed in the cost estimate. So that we can, I can show you how we get to the budget that we need to be at and why I thought we needed to maybe wait on some of these streets, or these are the streets I recommend. But again, if we need to have another conversation about how we're kind of picking some of these streets, that's something that we can certainly do before the application.
And I apologize. It took me the first 10 minutes to get the color coding system down.
Oh, no.
Like this, I didn't realize the cyan was the worst of the worst. And then I was thinking red was, so it took me a little while just to get caught up there.
Yes. So the original drawing that CT did is different than the back map that has the scale that's red to blue. I see where the confusion is. Sorry about that.
Blue is a happy color.
Yeah, I felt blue was good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Over at the North Columbus Street, the red, the part that you're talking about, North Columbus Street where it meets Route 3. There, after it rains, there's a lot of water right in front of the hub carryout. Yes, on the other side.
Where the yellow circle is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly. I don't know if that should be fixed first.
With a regular mill and fill, you're typically looking at just preparing the road. You might be able to do some drainage improvements as well there. And that's something we could look at if we ended up just doing the mill. With a more comprehensive project, we would definitely look at doing drainage improvements here. When I was out with Jake on Public Works, we walked this area and he talked about the drainage. He talked about it on both sides and how improvements in this area could greatly benefit and make it better. But yes, so either way, we can do something. It's just that if we were to do something more, we might have a better end product with some stormwater improvements. But again, sometimes additional work could cost a little bit more in the future. Okay. So with these walkthroughs, this is the only picture I have where we're actually facing north. You can see Goodfellas on the corner, and we've got the circles here. Essentially, the large circle kind of shows the edge of the road and how it's starting to kind of fall off to the side. I talked to Jake about that when we were out there, and he did feel his team could do some patching and improvements here to kind of hold the road over if we were going to look at this more comprehensively. You can see the long yellow line. I've got quite a few of these pictures that show that long driveway or even those dual driveways. From a safety standpoint, trying to tighten those up. One is a best practice, but two, it also takes communication. It's something that we'd need to reach out to the business owners and let them know, hey, we're looking at doing a project here and we'd like to work on the access management. The small circle at the end, there's a quick kind of turn in or turn out really close to the intersection. That's another access management nightmare when it comes to accidents. So another conversation that if we were to look at this road and maybe put a little bit more into it, closing up that location would be something we'd love to put on the table. The rest of the pictures are all southbound. So this is just looking at it from that angle. You can see that quick turn from 3 into Goodfellas. The other issues as we go further down, there are no sidewalks. I'll go back real quick. There are no sidewalks on either side of the road on this section of North Columbus. As you go further down towards Cherry Street, sidewalks exist. So as we walk through, you'll start to see where that picks up. But another thing we could look at if we did something more comprehensive, again, try to work on maybe some of this edge treatment that meets parking areas along the road. And then you can see I just drew a very simple sidewalk in that location, especially since it's flat, depending on the right of way, it could be something that could definitely improve the area. When, again, I was out there with Jake, I asked him if he'd ever seen anybody walking out there, and he said, absolutely. So I imagine people are walking maybe even up to Goodfellas in that corner. Another similar example, you can see those low curbs that I was talking about. At some point, they may have actually been 5 or 6 inches, but over time, putting asphalt down, they become these shallow curbs, and sometimes as they become shallow, they end up disappearing altogether. Existing sidewalk across from the Berg CrossFit exists in this location, and it just starts up right around here. So to the north, adding sidewalk could be a potential improvement. Same here along the barbecue. Long driveway again. And then you can also see that on the west side of the street, you have those large mature trees behind the existing sidewalks. So you start to get a little bit more of a streetscape feel, and how that transition could be accomplished if we do something further north is something to think about. And then I pointed out that top purple area kind of L's out. So I wanted to say, hey, the next pictures are going to be on that section of Cherry Street. Now, we have not included doing any mill work on Cherry, but CT at some point had done a price estimate for it. It's that 46,000 if we were just to improve the pavement and look at the intersection at Cherry and Columbus. So that is something that could be on the table for a future project. Or we could look maybe a little bit further to the west to do some improvements. I've got the arrow here where it narrows down from 3. That transition into the city has a really sharp curve, which is why they have all this safety signage here that's been hit numerous times from what I've been told. We've got a flashing light here for that safety, but with enough curve and enough right away, we might be able to straighten it out a little bit more and try to make that entry into this portion of Sunbury a little bit better, a little bit more visually, what we're looking for, the feel, historic. And I think that was all I was looking to point out here. There is that really high curve that you can see all the tire marks on as well, the white curve that's been painted. So maybe coming up with some sort of solution, even for like a retaining wall or something there, could be an improvement. Yellow South, so south of Cherry. And I'm not saying that in the future it has to be 2 projects north and south. It could end up being 3 or 4, depending upon the financing and if you guys are in favor of doing something more comprehensive. But let's look at the south. I've got the same notes here. Again, access management, transition, streetscapes. Those are all things I want you to keep in mind. The only other note at the very bottom here, I've circled Middle View and South View. As you know, we are planning to do a major project expansion on the wastewater treatment plant. That construction is going to last 2 years. 2 years of construction is going to beat up the road. So we could put some pavement down, but it may really impact the quality of what we put down. And maybe that's something as we get into construction, we say, hey, we got to do something. It's just in too bad a shape. Or we work with our in-house team and we see if we can extend that life and put it back together after the wastewater treatment plant is improved. Right now, I'm recommending that we delay both Middle View and South View. South View we could do, but I have a feeling Middle View would definitely come calling. Going to the south, just a quick reminder, CT is going to finish the design because we're near final design for the Columbus parking lot that's going to be adjacent to and across the street to the municipal building. Just a quick snapshot of what that looks like. We'd love to bid that out this year so that we can hit the ground running with construction next year, but we'd have to keep that in mind if we ended up doing any road improvements to this area so that we could keep it consistent. You can also kind of see the cracks in this location. That's something that we could handle in-house with crack sealing. Next to the automotive shop, there is an interesting island with a fire hydrant and beautification, maybe extending that a little bit longer. I realize auto shops really like to have a lot of space to move cars around. However, having cars on a road that you could go a little bit fast turning in could lead to some problems. Also, the sidewalk on the west side is in poor condition. There's also a lot of room on that side. You know, if we ended up going after a larger project with grant funding, you know, would a path make sense there? Also showing the Ohio to Erie Trail. So maybe trying to make a more comprehensive connection all the way up to the square, all the way up to 3 could be something we could look at. Moving in, I think you're all aware, South Vernon definitely could use some work. We are planning on bidding that out as an alternate next year, just to make sure that we get pricing on it and we can move and do work on that street as soon as we would be able to do that. I did circle the random staircase. I'm assuming when Nestle was there, maybe they were able to hop across the street and climb the stairs to the path. I'm not really sure, but that would be something we might want to address. Again, the sidewalk. I will point out the pedestrian bridge for the Ohio to Erie Trail is there. It's a pinch point. That would be a challenge to get the path continuous if we wanted to keep along the road there, which I would propose, but I think we probably could get it done. But again, it would be something we'd have to engineer in the future.
Quick question.
Sure.
What you've circled really is private property. Does that matter?
Here.
That and
Oh, sorry.
the oval.
This one?
That and the one across.
Typically the right of way goes to the sidewalk, but you're right. I do not have the exact right of way marked in this location, but typically the city has right of way beyond the sidewalk. There are some cases where that might not be the case, and that is something we would absolutely have to look at. And if we were proposing any work outside of the right of way, we'd have to look at easements and work with property owners, which I'd rather try and keep it within the right of way. And as we go further south, there are just a couple more pictures for this area. Yeah, there's just a couple more pictures for this area, and you can kind of see that there's some space.
Don't know about going under that bridge for pedestrians. That is a tight squeeze. But maybe a stair step above going up the hill. If
Yeah, it definitely could be looked at if we wanted to do something more
You needed to.
comprehensive. Yep, absolutely. If we wanted something continuous. Going a little quicker through these pictures. This is by the middle school. They've done an asphalt path coming down from Big Walnut Middle School. And then there's another connection down Brandy Corn to the Ohio to Erie Trail. This is where the sidewalk ends. And actually there are sidewalks on both sides in this location, coming southbound. And then there is a sign for school crossing, a good candidate for another RRFB. We've got another pinch point with a culvert that goes underneath the road, but the city happens to own some property right behind the culvert. So we could look at doing a meandered path connection. And then much further down, there's another school, elementary, and this is where I wanted to point out, there are telephone poles along here, and they're all significantly far away from the edge of pavement, where, and between mailboxes. To me, sidewalk path could be a potential use in that area. Real quick, getting into the RRFBs, I think most of you are aware that we were looking at doing safety improvements at GRE Elementary School. On Fairland Road, we already have a spot identified for the flashing beacon. We'd be interested in getting the final design by CT, as well as perhaps looking at Heartland Meadows, which is the green rectangle along the side. The exact location hasn't been identified. However, we were discussing whether or not it would make sense for it to be further south. But again, that would need to be designed. I've got a note at the top. They are on back order for a lot of the pieces that are related to these flashing beacons. And we do have some money remaining in our 2024 contract. One option we could have would be to finish the design and buy the equipment, get it ordered so that in 9 months, hopefully not 12, but we would be able to have that in stock and pay to have it installed as part of one of our projects.
2024 contract, what do you mean?
So one of the things we had planned on doing as part of this project is the RRFB. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you may remember we had it in the original proposal to OPWC. When we didn't get OPWC money, we pulled this out. We just did the streets. But one of the things we had talked about is prioritizing the completion of the design this year, and then maybe finding another source in which to complete the project. I think what she may have been alluding to is the fact that we did not in this year do the South Vernon Street improvement. So, I mean, maybe there would be an opportunity to maybe capture some of those funds, purchase the equipment now, and again, be positioned to be able to install this as quickly as possible in 2025.
We budgeted for it. Not for this specifically. We budgeted the right amount in street improvements, the bucket.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Back to the budget sheet. This identifies, at least on the list, the streets that are recommended to potentially delay and come back to later, either with similar work or, like I said, I can do a little bit of work and try and look for these complete streetscape projects in those areas. So that would be the Middleview, Southview Drive area, basically the entire sections that were identified on Columbus Street and down at South Old 3C Road, and then Mill Run Drive and Mill Stream as well. Quick visualization. These pictures are all in order of the worst to the best, and I put little X's next to the ones that I think that we have been identified to delay. So you can see the worst, we aren't recommending any of those. Middleview and North Columbus and Southview are all shown on here. We could look at doing patchwork, crack sealing, and see if maybe a different treatment would make sense. The other streets all listed along Columbus. But you can see some of the conditions better and some of it's very localized to the edge of pavement. So having our public works team maybe take a look at it to see if we can extend the life would be an option. And then Mill Stream is the only one on here, but that's a great candidate for crack sealing. Overall budget numbers are here. I've got it down to where the local funds would be approximately $1 million. Then we've got the funding in there, and then I've added design, construction, inspection, South Vernon, just to make sure we captured all of the funds that would need to be accounted for in next year's budget. And then this is where we get to questions and.
Yeah, so go back to the previous screen if you could. Thank you. So to maybe sum up a little bit. So the first sheet, or this sheet, which shows all of the streets, again, basically that's based upon the PACER rating. If we were to do everything that we think falls into the category of needing some attention, it ends up being about, I think, $1.7 million. We've budgeted $1 million in local funds. So that's the reason to take out those streets that are recommended. And I think mostly what you're hearing Carla say is that those streets also offer maybe an opportunity for us to think more strategically about what we do longer term. We can think about that over the course of the next year in terms of whether it's a bigger project. And it's certainly, a lot of those are related to are related to entries to the city. So kind of the work that we're doing with the Streetscape Committee, I mean, there's maybe a way to kind of engage that group a little bit more over the course of the next year so that next year's budget includes, you know, their input as well into kind of how the street program unfolds. So,
And with a little bit more time, we could pursue grant funding.
yeah, good point. So, all right.
Real back, quick on that previous slide. So we actually would have more funding than what the total is for. I mean, we have a little bit of cushion. Is that what we're seeing here? Because I think the one that's 1.4 million and the total cost is 1.265.
Yeah, so.
Right.
So the total, you end up subtracting that 300,000 from it. You can't subtract the 100,000
Okay.
because that's a loan value.
Oh,
And
sorry.
so that's where we get to that,
Yeah, okay,
that 1 million.
okay.
You know, and this is a program built upon an assumption that we get $300,000 in grant funding from OPWC. So, which we may not, you know, and again, and if we didn't get the OPWC grant or loan funding, you know, then we'd kind of be back in the same situation we were last year, which is to scrub our numbers a little bit more.
So I'm sorry for being dense here. So if we have the $1.1 million local funds and let's say we got the $300,000 grant request, there would be no need for the loan request, correct? Because we'd have 1.3 to cover the 1.265. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think what you're trying to do though is you're trying to show all of the costs associated with it, not just the road cost itself, which includes the inspection, the design work, which a lot of times we haven't talked about that, I think, as part of our.
Okay, so the green box
program
is not
historically.
included in that total box.
Yeah, am I saying that correctly?
So the green box is included in the program costs and the contingency. Yes, so the total that we need to aim for, everything above this 1.265 is going to be design construction, all of the streets, stormwater improvements, RRFBs, and then delaying the streets that were potentially recommended. That's the total that we would need to hit so that we could have the grant funding available and get closer to that 1 million.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying though, then is if we did get the loan program, the loan reimbursement, we'd still disperse $1 million, but we get $100,000 of that back in the form of a loan that we would ultimately have to pay out over some period of time. So yeah, I mean, fair point. Fair point.
I'm not trying to nitpick, but just like the last line should be 1.065, not 1.010. Like if grant 300,000 and a loan for 100,000 are ownership, I think that's maybe one part that's throwing us off, but.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but as you recall, the reason for getting the loan is you get extra points on.
Right.
So typically it's a low number relative.
Yeah, understood.
And this looks like we're fronting a lot higher amount than we have in the past, so probably stand a little better chance
Yeah.
at securing the 300 with us putting $1 million of our own up.
Yeah, as we talked about yesterday, yeah, I think we've thought about a loan or a street program that's $1 million, but it's really $1 million with whatever we've gotten from the OPWC. This one is $1 million of local contribution plus whatever we can get from the OPWC. So you're right, it is a bigger commitment from the city than maybe what we have historically done, at least in recent years. The current year's budget, again, the current year's program, again, I think is around $700,000. So it's $1 million of local money. I mean, that's a big jump over where we are this year.
Mhm.
And that's the number we got $1 million in the budget that we've been talking to the finance committee and others about up to this point. So, yeah.
Question.
So, yeah, I was going to say, so we certainly have done some street crack filling work this year. So I think that's why we're a little bit more confident that if we did delay some work on some of these streets, that we have the capacity to do that. We've got the equipment and we've got the skill level of our team to be able to do that. So I think the real question is, would you like us to be thinking, again, bigger picture as it relates to these gateway projects, or do you want us to go back and basically say, just take the highest needs right now and let's go in that direction? That's not what is being proposed. Again, what's being proposed is the ones that have the highest need, but also taking a step back, thinking about those gateways and spending a little bit more time kind of working through what those could look like and make that a part of next year's program.
I'm comfortable with the budget. What I'm not comfortable with right now is like the streets. I mean, we went through a ton of information. Honestly, I was like playing catch up the whole time on just the format of the deck, and it's just different. I mean, honestly, from what we've done in the past. So I'm not even sure I 100% know exactly what we're doing yet. with the different color coding and rating systems. I get the Pacer systems. That's where I would like to spend the most time, and there's no way to do it in a meeting over the PowerPoint deck. So
Okay.
I need some time to look at it. I don't know if everybody else is like on board and like go forward with the recommended plan. Let's talk afterwards what the recommended plan is, because I'm not 100% sure right now.
I like to say, I mean, I like the concept, but going with the mayor say, maybe a little bit more information, but I like the concept of thinking through what it is we want to do before we just do it. And let's tackle it all at once versus piecemealing it together. I think my only thought would be is if there's any safety concern for any of the things that we're delaying, maybe that's something we talk about too. If it's more aesthetics and just making a better road, that's fine. But if there's something like, the crosswalk is nice, but if there's anything else that really has got, then maybe that needs to move up on the list if it's a true safety concern. But
I'm with you, John. That's actually one of my top notes was safety improvements. Are they included? And the one Fairland we hit on. The other one that's come up a lot is the Heartland Meadows by General Rosecrans. And I think you had at least like placeholder in there for something to happen.
Mhm.
But I agree with you. I mean, we're upping our budget quite a bit. It seems like those would be some of the first items that we would tackle.
Well, and the safety programs are additional points towards the OPWC funding too, correct?
Yes.
And in some cases, like open for other grant opportunities.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
I think one of my chief questions, because I frankly like the idea of looking more holistically at Columbus Street and some of the improvements that need to happen, because I think everybody agrees most of those need to happen. Are we digging any holes by waiting that's going to incur higher costs?
Mhm.
If, we give ourselves a year to find grant funding for it and fail to do so?
There's definitely that to consider. So one of the reasons you would do a mill and fill on a section of road would be to prevent it from further maintenance in-house, but also from getting to the point where you might have to have a reconstruction. The hope is that you have this mill and fill street that might be, we'll call it a Pacer rating 5. We crack seal it, we try to patch it, we can keep it at that Pacer rating 5, extend it a year or two, and then look to see if there's something more we could do there. Or if we get through a winter and, there are a lot of potholes and we need to do something, it climbs up further on the list. And we go ahead and we repair it with mill and fill, and perhaps we look at doing a project 5-6 years down the line after we've already done that paving. But I didn't see anything on any of the streets that I recommended delaying that made me think, oh, this is going to be really bad. I would say down where the wastewater treatment plant is, that's probably the trickiest area, just because that construction traffic, well, we'll have to keep an eye on it.
Is there a quick exhibit like this that shows what you're recommending?
So no, we didn't get to that point where we've got the final recommendation.
Okay.
Yep, but I can get one.
Okay. And I think one of the earlier questions is like, what do we do next? I mean, you're on a tight timeline to get
Yep.
this submitted. We don't have another services committee meeting.
Right.
We do have opportunities, I guess, in finance, but then, I think we need another session like this between now and then, whether it's one-on-one with everybody or something, but we've got to come to a consensus on services committee is behind the plan and go. Because the budget is like schedule is lining up with this as well.
Yes.
Can we do a special work group between now and finance to bring a recommendation to finance?
I think it would be a special meeting if
It
there's.
would have to be a special meeting.
think so.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Different approach.
if we were to convene this group, that's a meeting. We might as well just call it a special meeting of the services committee and call it and do it that way. There will be a resolution to prepare, submit an OPWC application that'll be on a council agenda. So there will be a chance for the council to weigh in, I guess, on that particular piece of it. So I guess I'm saying is, if we would like to meet again, then what we'll do is we'll work to get a special committee meeting of the services committee to just kind of hone in on the final application itself. And then we'll have plenty of time on the council agenda to get it in front of council.
Yeah, real quick, can I ask, I mean, is there any chance that, since this also, in my opinion, has to do with finance, because we're talking about budget, we're talking, I mean, can you include it on a finance agenda or is that an
Good.
inappropriate?
What I want to do is just make sure that I'm not stepping all over Dana's schedule. So let me look at that. And yeah, I'll circle back and let you know.
Half an hour, 45 minutes before finance. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly, right, and that could be a
That's
special
very
meeting.
busy day for everybody, but.
Yeah.
For,
I mean, that's a great option for reconvening this group. That's right.
Very good.
All right, but before that, what we'll do is summarize the roads that are that are recommended. We'll get you an updated map of that and we'll clean up the budget just to make sure that it's a little bit more clear. So apologize for that. So.
I don't think you can wait. The longer you wait, the more prices are gonna go up. I think it's a good plan, but you have to decide for sure which ones are primacy.
Yeah, sure.
nice.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I can't wait to talk more about streets. But I've got Jake here. Do we have time?
We got a few more minutes.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
So one of the things, yeah, come on up, Jake. So one of the things we had talked about last year is that we were trying to document in some ways our snow and ice plan. We hadn't really done that. I mean, our team, you know, they knew what they did, but we didn't really document it in a written form. With Jake's help, we were able to kind of put together some kind of a high level procedures document that's included in your packet. I just wanted to give Jake a couple of minutes to kind of talk a little bit about the plan this year and kind of what we do historically, just so you know. And if we want to get into more detail later, we can certainly have Jake back. So give him 5 minutes, Jake.
All right, yes, so just a surface level look at what we kind of have been doing historically here. I wanted to show a highlight of color coded sections, quadrants of the city that we have guys that are dedicated on these areas with these streets. And we have them highlighted as A, B, C, and D, which is a little different than the leaf collection route, but this ends up actually allowing each guy to have about the same amount of lane miles to control and clean. Some of the roads are also in agreement with Berkshire Township, and we are also communicating and working with ODOT as well about our the state routes going through and some of the outlying roads, make it more efficient for us to tackle, and we trade with Berkshire. This here is just a closer look at section A and after that, we've come up with section, this is quadrant B, and it primarily stays with South Columbus as the kind of east and west indicator there. And following that, we go into section C, and that's kind of primarily kind of on the east and west side of Route 3. Again, this all is dividing the team into about the same amount of lane miles to manage and maintain. And then this is a look at section D a little more in detail. So, and sections C and D are the ones we run the bigger single axle dump trucks on.
Yeah, so maybe just a couple of points on this. So the state, let's just make sure we understand. So essentially when the state comes through town, they're on the state routes, they've got their plow down. They basically keep it down as they come through Sunbury. I think our standard operating agreement with them is that we help to clean up the intersection, kind of move the snow back and clean. When I say clean up the intersection, I mean, you know, they're just coming through with a big plow and keeping it down. The team, his team then helps to move it back a little bit, make it just a little bit safer. The other thing, he mentioned Berkshire Township. I mean, if you think about 3 Bs and a K, a portion of that is in the city of Sunbury, but a vast majority of that is sitting over in Berkshire Township at the moment. So we have had an agreement with Berkshire to basically they maintain Berkshire, or they maintain 3 Bs and a K. We've picked up, is it Johnny Walker? Am I saying that? Joe Walker. We picked up Jim Walker.
That's this meeting.
There we go. I'm sorry, Joe Walker. That's what we do. Joe Walker's road. That's right. And this agreement is basically snow and ice related. It's not related to generally other maintenance on the road at this point. But it's worked, And, we've developed a good working relationship with the Berkshire Township team. The other point that I'm going to add as well then is that you can see the map that he's showing you at the moment basically are the existing streets in the city of Sunbury. As you are aware, we've got developments that are coming online, and, it's likely that some of those roads could be accepted maybe in the Rolling Hills subdivision before winter. I've reached out again, just try to understand where we are in terms of the acceptance process of those roads. So it's possible that we could end up with a few more lane miles than are currently showing on the map. I think as Jake and I have talked a little bit about that, we think we could handle that with the existing staff and with the existing equipment, but we are starting to get to a point, where we're going to need to think a little bit about additional equipment. And we've at least budgeted for some additional equipment on the snow and ice side as part of next year's plan. So, so those are just a couple of the other factors that are kind of in play at the moment. For the most part, I think you deploy your team all at once. We haven't really had kind of staggered shifts quite yet, unless, I was gonna say, at this point, we had talked about maybe doing that based upon the intensity of a storm, the duration of a storm, but for the most part, you're kind of deploying everybody at the same time. And, am I saying that correctly?
No, that's accurate. Yep, everybody at the same time, and we will help jump onto other quadrants if there is necessities that they are getting accomplished and cleaned as soon as possible. We also have seasonals that'll help out and are dedicated to the sidewalks. So those are being handled and maintained at the same time. So it's all almost completed in one swing. So,
And maybe another point to raise here is that Jake has, I think actually with Dan's help, we have worked to calibrate the salt. Yeah, you want to kind of talk about that point, because we know we probably put a little bit too much salt on the road early last season, but
yes, the team was getting adjusted to the equipment and they're dedicated to a truck, so that way they can also get a better feel for how it operates. But we were able to, for the first time, calibrate this spreading abilities with the trucks, that we were more efficient on how many tons we put down per lane mile. So we're going to be more cost effective on our salt usage.
I think that's mostly what we want to cover, unless there are questions or comments.
Any questions?
Good work, Jake.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, we have 8 minutes. Do you want to review wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, we're just going to talk highly about this, or on a high level about this. We did receive a memo from the CT Consultants team regarding kind of where we stand with our wastewater treatment plant bid process. We will distribute that to the group. So you'll have a chance to read that. We can talk about that a little bit later at the next meeting. But the one other important point to note is that the bid opening, at least at the moment, is currently scheduled for October 16th. So that is a little bit of a delay from the last time we spoke. And then on the Sunbury Estates sidewalk and trees, actually with Jake's help, I've been overseeing this. All the trees are down at this point. The stumps have been ground, and the concrete has been installed in the sidewalks. There's still some cleanup work that needs to be done, and there certainly needs to be trees replanted. That portion of the project isn't completely done yet. But somewhere in the neighborhood of 35-ish trees have come down as a result of this. So we know we've been following that pretty closely. And the other thing, just as a reminder, our policy is such that we did also say that anyone who wanted to opt in and remove their tree before they have a problem with their sidewalk, there still is an opportunity for residents to do that. We'll do one more outreach to the community on that before the end of this calendar year. We've maybe had 2 or 3 who have opted in for that, not a big number, and we may, get a few more. I don't anticipate it ends up being a big number.
That's a really nice job in that neighborhood. I mean, just getting all the different contractors to work together and the neighbors, and a long view that, I mean, Tim Ghost was instrumental in that, taking the lead and like getting the community involved. And Damon, thanks for always keeping it at the top of your agenda. Thank you. But I drove through it the other day and I thought it looked great. I mean, the new concrete slabs look very nice, and you can tell the contractor is working to clean it up. So nice work.
Yeah, appreciate Jake has been following that pretty closely. Once the contractors got on site. So good work. Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Second by Mayor St. John. Roll call. Yes.
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 You.